I recently attended the World Business Forum in New York City. One of the highlights of the conference was a presentation by Michael Porter on strategy. And Michael reminds us of something that's easy to lose track of in the day-to-day battle to compete. And that is that you should not try to be the best company in your industry. Instead, you should try to be the most unique business in your industry. Now, Porter argues that simply trying to be the best is running a race that you can't win. And it reminds me of a metaphor that I've often used about trying to be the fastest gun in the West. On all the Westerns that you remember from your childhood, being the fastest gun in the West as a strategy worked really well until it didn't, and then you ended up dead. And we want to avoid that plight in business as well. So being the best or being the fastest gun only is not a sustainable strategy. And when it ends badly. So what does work? What ends up working is this whole idea of trying to be unique. Because what you don't want to do is, if you're trying to be the best and everybody else is trying to be the best, you end up being part of these zombie-like companies that are all creating this commodity where we're all doing the same things for the same people and charging the same price, and it ends up being this kind of purgatory where you all have these average performing companies, and it's just this field of mediocrity. And I don't know about you, but personally I would really rather be dead trying to be the fastest gun in the West than sentenced to this perennial purgatory of mediocrity. But all of this can be avoided, and the good news is it can be avoided relatively simply. As Jack Welch always says, business is simple, but that doesn't make it easy. And strategy is no different. The goal of strategy is to create a sustainable competitive advantage. So therefore, you have to find the result of being the most unique business in your industry rather than the best. Now, another fundamental principle of strategy to get out on the table is that operational effectiveness isn't a strategy either. Now, operational effectiveness is necessary, but it's really just the table stakes that it takes to get in the game. It's not strategy. Now, Porter describes the difference between flawless execution, operational effectiveness, and strategy as follows. Operational effectiveness has to do with assimilating, attaining, and extending best practices, essentially doing the same things better than everybody else. Strategic positioning, on the other hand, is about creating a unique and sustainable competitive position. Or in other words, do things differently to achieve a different purpose. That's strategy. So if being the best is not an effective strategy, and operational effectiveness is not a strategy at all, how do we go about successfully creating a strategy for our companies? Well, Porter suggests a 5-part test to evaluate your strategic plans. Number 1, do you have a unique and compelling value proposition for your targeted customer? Which begs the questions, what customers are you going to target? Which needs are you going to try to fill, and at what price? Number 2, how are you going to configure your supply chain differently from your competitors? Now, it's the combination of the answers to these 2 questions that really are the keys to creating a sustainable competitive advantage. Number 3, do you have a stop doing list? This is where Jim Collins gets involved in strategy with Michael Porter. Those of you who are Good to Great fans will know that having a stop doing list was a key component to people being able to make the shift from good to great. So stop trying to compete in areas where you cannot create a sustainable competitive advantage. Number 4 is all about fit. Do all of the elements of your strategic plan fit well together? And this is a lot like one of the things we've always emphasized at Somerset, which is that being 1% better in 100 areas creates a more sustainable competitive advantage than being 100% better than your competitors in one area, assuming that all of the pieces of your strategic puzzle fit together synergistically. Now, number 5 is very important, and that is that Porter reminds us that we need to be persistent and determined. He suggests that it can take 3 years for a strategic plan to pay off, so we will need to have some patience as well. Now, Porter closed his presentation with some reminders of specifically what you should be focusing on in your strategic planning when you are facing difficult economic times. Number 1, he recommends that we refocus on economic fundamentals. Are you achieving an above-average return on invested capital for your stockholders? For the last 15 years, corporate America has averaged 13 to 14% return on invested capital. So that's the bar, the hurdle rate that we've got to get over to provide an above-average return on invested capital for our stockholders. How do we do that? We need to focus on return on invested capital by market segment, by individual customer. It's all about these fundamentals. Number 2, we need to stay focused on our strategies rather than attempting to deal with every issue that comes across our desk. We need to have what Porter described as a Zen-like ability to concentrate on your strategies. At Somerset, one of the things we've always recommended is Pareto's Law. Focus on the 20% of your business that is yielding 80% of your results. Number 3, Porter cautions that we don't want to overreact to distressed conditions. Economic cycles are to be expected, and to date, this one is no worse than others we have faced. It's bad, but we've been there. We were there in the 70s. We were there in the early 80s. We were there in the early 90s. We've seen these types of economic cycles before. Number 4, don't do make sure that you are cutting costs to a strategy. We're all going to have to be cutting costs, but rather than cutting costs across the board, reducing our overhead 10% pro rata. Cut costs to a strategy. Cut 100% of your costs in areas where you're not achieving above average returns on invested capital, and then invest in areas where you are. So cut, but cut to a strategy, and then invest in areas where you are achieving your goals. Number 5, take advantage of this window of opportunity when the market is down to fundamentally improve your business at the core. A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. Now's the time to take whatever hits that you need to take in order to get your books and your business model in order. People are expecting you to have a down year. Your stakeholders are more understanding of this than they typically are. So go ahead and seize this opportunity to right-size your business model. Secondly, as you really look at being a change driver within your organization, change is hard and people resist change. But in times of economic challenge, people are more open to change than they normally are. So even with your people, you're going to find that change management is easier in times of economic stress and strain because people expect that they are in fact going to have to change and they are more willing and eager to do so. Number 6 is to seize the challenges, or seize the opportunities. Challenging times are always full of them. Seize the opportunities. So that is Michael Porter's thoughts on strategy. We would like you to share with us your thoughts on strategy. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.